So back to the Mini. You saw in the previous video. If you've watched it, I'll leave a link in the top corner here if you haven't. We changed the timing chain, sprockets, tensioner, guides, the whole lot from that kit that we bought from Modern Mini, as shown in the video. That hasn't cured the running issue, so although it's not the end of the world having changed all that, it's a bit of a pain because obviously there's expense, not a great amount of expense, but a bit of expense and time went into it, so it's a bit frustrating that I didn't fix it. But when I come to sell the car, obviously any potential buyers having the chain and everything like that changed is going to be a plus point for the buyer. So it's not the end of the world, but a bit of a pain nonetheless. So it's been a couple of weeks since, or 2-3 weeks since I've done that, and kids and a full-time job have kind of got in the way about doing anything to the Mini, so it's just sat here. But in that meantime, I have looked at what any future potential or any other potential problems could be causing this running issue. I've watched a couple of videos on misfires, although it's not really got a misfire. I was more looking at the comments, and I came across one video, and in the comment it said about the exhausts going cherry red after running for a few minutes. So mine isn't quite going full cherry red, but after 10-15 minutes, as I explained in the video when I first got the Mini, that it was getting very hot and red hot in the under the flexi, so that could be a potential problem. And the fix that they said was, or the issue that they said was, a split intake rubber on the supercharger, or the supercharger horn, or something like that. Once it leaks, obviously it's completely thrown out the air fuel ratio and causing the issue. So I wanted to service the supercharger anyway. I've seen plenty of videos. They've gone to drain one end of the supercharger, and there has literally been a couple of drops of oil come out. So it's something that BMW and I believe Eaton themselves say isn't serviceable. But no oil, in my mind, lasts a lifetime, so it needs changing. It's not a big expense. So once again, I bought the parts from Modern Mini. As you can see, it comes with every single gasket sleeve. It comes with a syringe. The oil comes with everything, even down to an Allen key that you need to be able to service the supercharger. The water pump is fixed to the back of the supercharger, so I also, at the same time, for the sake of, I think it was 50 quid extra, I bought a new water pump as well, as it makes sense to change that. One Mini, one kit will hopefully resolve the issue. So I've watched a very brief guide on how to do this, but I'm sure it'll all become quite apparent as we get into it. So obviously we need to put it into what they call service mode. So we take the front bumper off, the crash bar, and then all the rad pack we should be able to just move to the side, so we don't need to recharge the air conditioning. So save yourself a little bit of money there, and then that should pretty much expose the whole front of the engine. The front bumper comes off quite easily. On mine there's two 10mm bolts underneath. There's a 10mm bolt in each wheel arch, and then there's two 8mm bolts on the top. Once all these are removed, the front bumper can be pulled forward, the electrical connections disconnected and put to one side. The crash bar is then held in with one 13mm bolt and four 13mm nuts each side before that can be removed. We then needed to remove the crash tubes at the front. These are held in by two 16mm bolts underneath and a 10mm bolt at the front. The passenger side caused was a bit more of a struggle to get out, so I need a little bit of gentle persuasion with a mallet. We can then move to the arches, where they've then got four little clips each side holding all the plastic of the rad pack to the arch liner. We can then look at removing the top and bottom radiator hoses. The top one is quite simple to get off, but the bottom one proved to be a bit of a struggle. But in the meantime, I just took the two 10mm bolts out that hold the aircon radiator in place, so then it can be moved to the side, and then tried to tackle the bottom rad hose. The fill point for the air conditioning, I ended up taken off to give me a bit more flexibility in removing the rad pack before draining it and putting it to one side. So that wasn't quite as bad as what I was expecting to get off. I didn't realise all this plastic bit around here had to come off each side. I didn't realise that was all combined with the radiator cowling and things. Otherwise I'd have perhaps taken the wheels off and the arch liners off rather than struggle with these clips, because you can get a screwdriver in. So you saw me punching them from the, obviously I can get to the rear of them, so I punched them out from the back. But yeah, you can see now how easy, relatively easy, we've got access to the supercharger. Well, at least we can see it now. So see, it's a bit of a excessive oil leak at the front here, so I have to clean that up. And hopefully that came from the cam cover that we've obviously already changed. So we've got water going in here. Well, that pipe's not going to be in the way, but you can see the recirculating valve up here onto the bottom of this horn, which is why we've got to take this horn off. Obviously we've got to take the intercooler off to join to this horn, take the belt off, so I'll fight with that stupid tool again. Yeah, I've got to take the dipstick tube off, because there's a mountain there, so we'll have to fill that hole, because obviously the water pump being at the back there, chances are it's going to drop a load of water when we take that out. Belt tensioner yet again, because of that stupid tool. I meant to modify it last time when I had the tensioner off, but I didn't get around to it, so hence I fought with it again. But I've just realised is this mount here for the tensioner is bolted to the supercharger, so we may end up taking it all off, which will be a bit of a pain, because I think we'll probably end up having to take the engine mount off to get it out. But hopefully we can just wiggle. I think there might be enough room. We can just wiggle the supercharger out. So next job will be alternator off, because that bolts on to the supercharger, and then it'll be intake pipes. So to get the supercharger all disconnected, there's just 3 10mm bolts holding the alternator on, a 10mm nut holding the battery cable on the back, and a little electrical connector. Obviously make sure you disconnect the battery before touching the alternator. We then moved on to the left hand side of the car, where we've got the left hand supercharger horn, which is just held on with 3 11mm nuts, and then the throttle body to the lower pipe was held on with 4 10mm bolts. And then trying to take all this out was a nightmare. So a little update on what I've discovered about this, what I assumed was an oil leak coming from up above with the rocker cover gasket, which we previously changed when doing the timing kit. That's where I assumed it was coming from. But looking at this now, I've almost removed this pipe. There's a couple of extra pipes in there before I can get it off. If you just move it to the side, you can see it's clean above my hand. There's a bit of oil dripping out of it, so it's clearly coming from that joint there with this seal, which I believe this is the one that was advised to change on that video, which explained the running issue. So hopefully it will be that problem. But what I will do is I will take this pipe off and double check to make sure it's not cracked or anything like that. But you can see all the gunk around it anyway, so that one needs cleaning up. But we're getting there with stripping it down. You just see me take all the intake stuff off, as I've said on the videos. But yeah, a little bit of wear in that pipe there, but it's not too bad. But yeah, so there shouldn't be too much more to do by the looks of it. We've got this pipe here, we've got a water pipe at the back there, and I'll try and get out. Looks like we can move this pipe out of the way just a bit, and we've got dipstick, and then hopefully it should come off. There is a small water pipe to remove. We then remove the dipstick tube, which is held on by 2 13mm bolts, and we fill the hole with a bit of rag to stop any coolant going down there. We then remove the bolt for the belt tensioner, and then loosen the bolts off that hold the supercharger on. And there is 2 8mm bolts that are hidden behind the water pump that connect the water pump to the block. It's loose, so I think if we take this one out and hopefully a bit of a wiggle, it will come free. This pipe's off There is a water pipe just up there which I've got to pull off as it comes off, and this pipe here I can't get out of here, and from what I understand is these clips break quite easily and you can't buy them separately from BMW. So that pipe just runs up to there, so hopefully I can just feed that through, and then once it's off the car I might get a bit more success at getting that off. But for now I think we ain't far coming off. Hopefully slide off. So you can now clearly see that the oil wasn't leaking on the head gasket or further up. It's clearly coming from here, which that doesn't seem to be. A bit of inspection. Once again, I've got those silly clips here, so I daren't take those out. But that doesn't appear to be split or anything like that. So I'll give it a good clean up and give it another good look. But it's looking like that might be the culprit. I mean, that's very hard, so I think that's just shrunk over time, and perhaps clearly letting some air out, and that's clearly been leaking for a while, judging by the state of that. I'm surprised when whoever changed the alternator, as that's clearly new, didn't really pick up on that at the same time. But there we go. So supercharger's off. So we've got a new water pump. I've got the kit comes with all the gaskets as you previously saw, so we will change everything that we possibly can to hopefully cure the issue. So now that supercharger is off, we'll have a quick look at taking this horn off and changing this gasket here. We've also got a new water pump to fit, so we'll remove this one, and then before fitting it, you can see, you can't quite see because of the sun, down here we've got the drain point for the oil to lubricate the gears, and there'll be one this side somewhere, so we'll have a look at draining, see how much oil comes out, and replace it with some nice new stuff. So in the parts from Modern Mini, now that we've got the supercharger off, we've got a new gasket. Looks like it goes that way around, so we'll take this horn off and we'll change this gasket. What we might just do is just take this horn off and we'll get the water pump off, as I've also got a new one here from Modern Mini. I thought we might as well change that at the same time while we've got the supercharger off, and these are all the other parts that we've got. So we'll whip that horn off, we'll whip the water pump off, and then we'll drain the oil in the supercharger to replace it with this nice new fresh oil. So just to make the supercharger a bit lighter, for draining the oil, we'll whip those bits off. So we can now inspect the vanes inside the supercharger. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't know exactly what I am looking for, but there's no obvious sign. There's a little scratch mark just there, but there's no obvious signs of any damage. So what you can see is a couple of little scratch marks, but I can't see that's particularly damaged, so it's quite good. We'll tidy all this up before putting it on. So we'll take that drain, we'll take that fill point out there, and it's there. So the Modern Mini kit even comes with the Allen key that is needed, which is you can't get better than that for supplying you the parts, when it even comes with the required Allen key. So highly recommend Modern Mini, and there's a link to this kit in the description. More oil than I was expecting came out of there. Let's just put him in loosely for a sec and we'll drain the other end. That's down there. Cool. That's tight. Vacuum in there, so, ooh. That's gloopy old stuff compared to the other end. I said there's quite enough coming out of there. So according to Model Mini, it's 440 to 145 millimeters should have been in there. It's pretty safe to say. I don't think there's quite. Oh, no, there's more coming now. Perhaps there is enough in there. Majority of it out. There. Pretty safe to say that's what I'm going to get. So, great people at Model Mini supply you with new seals to go in the filler. And even a syringe to syringe the oil in. Comes with some instructions. It says 140 to 145 milliliters supplied to a pulley chamber, so I'm assuming that's the pulley chamber. 40 to 45 to use the water pump changer, obviously the chamber. So that is the other end. So we'll fill this end up first. Can't get in there otherwise. Let's go. That is 60. So 60. Well, there's an air bubble in there. We can lift it up to the 60 mark, so I know there's definitely 60 going in. So that's 120. Five. So that 145 mil. Simple as that. Slippery bugger. Right. Change that seal for a new one. Screw him back in. Not wipe over. There, one end done. Now, So this end it says 40 to 45, so simple as that. Change the seal on this one as well. Simple as that. Now we'll check the new water pump on the end. This new water pump, so we need to take this fitting off here, which it's pulled off, and there is a ring around there. Once again, what a mini kit comes with everything that you need, plus the actual water pump came with a gasket as well, but I'm not sure. I'm assuming the one with the water pump go around there. Oh, that feels a bit loose. Feels a bit looser than what I'd ideally like, so the Model Mini one comes with a couple of kits, and that feels a bit better, so chuck that one on. And then obviously we've got one to go in here also. If we just chuck him on. So now clean the inside of this up a bit. It's a bit skanky. There we go. That's better. So it's like that. We've got a pipe to change over as well shortly, but we'll perhaps fit this back on. Nicely sits in there. Alright. So, then way round, line the marks up. So new gasket, it says top one there, you can see it. Yeah, you can just about make it out. pipe. Some marks on here to line up to that little marking on the pump, so we can make sure we get this in the right orientation. That's nicely stuck on there. Let's give it a bit of a bit of persuasion. There we go. Give that a clean up. Clip back in the same place. There we go. So, oil's been changed, this gasket's been changed, water pump and the gaskets, the O-rings in the water pump have been changed, so we're ready to go on. But really just need to tidy up all this mess here. So with some trusty brake cleaner, I gave it all a good squirt, let that soak in, and I bought some little wire brushes, little pack of 3 from Screwfix for the grand sum of £3.49, just to give it a good scrub. I then cleaned up all the intake pipe and everything and gave that a bit of a check over to make sure it wasn't split. So it's all now cleaned up as best we can with the brake cleaner. I've just cleaned up the end of the supercharger where the intake pipe goes on and fitted that new seal. So I think we're now at a stage of being able to refit everything. So let's crack on. So refitting the supercharger is just the reversal of when we removed it by getting it in place. There is a couple of dowels to locate it and then putting the bolts in and the 2 little 8mm bolts behind the water pump. But I've made a bit of an error here. Can anybody spot it? The supercharger's in place with just the bolts loosely done up, but I've just realised I made a mistake. So this pipe that I couldn't get out of here because I thought I was going to break the clip needs to be fed through here when I put the supercharger on. So I'm going to have to pull it off again. Take 2 at fitting the supercharger, this time making sure we feed the pipe through the intake manifold. So, supercharger's back on with the pipe now going past the inlet manifold. So, point's just going back for a reminder from the reverse of putting together. We've got the 2 13mm bolts here, one 13mm bolt here, one 13mm bolt here, and behind the water pump there is 2 10mm bolts, which that flange spins. As you saw me putting it on the water pump, so it's a bit of a pain to get lined up. But and then we've just got this little coolant line here, which I bought these, where are they? These little pliers for doing those sort of clips. I believe I got them on Amazon before. Always struggled with those sort of pliers or long nose pliers. I bought those. They weren't a lot. I'll leave a link in the description, but excellent for doing those. So I've left this pipe off loose for now because we've got to put all the throttle body and everything on here. There's a new pipe to go on here. It came with the Mod Mini kit. Where is it? Here it is. Nice silicone one. So I put that on there with the tubular clips, but that was all really tight getting that off. So I thought if I leave this pipe loose for now, hopefully it'll be a bit easier getting it all back together. So started off by fitting the new silicone pipe supplied in the kit from Mod Mini that goes from the intake pipe to the recirculation valve. We then fitted the throttle body and pipe to the airbox, not forgetting to attach the 2 smaller pipes and the electrical connections. Next was the coolant hose that goes to the top of the radiator, and then we fitted the horn that goes from the intercooler to the intake manifold. I then discovered that I'd forgotten to route some of the wiring that goes around to the front of the engine, so I had to sort that out. Next up was refitting the dipstick tube using new O-ring also supplied in the kit, and then fitted the alternator. We then routed the serpentine belt and pulled the pin on the tensioner. The radiator and the plastic panel at the front was next to go on, fixing the air conditioning rad in place and then refitting the crash tubes down at the bottom. It was then a bit of a struggle to try and get the bottom hose onto the radiator in the space that allowed. So next I refitted the crash bar, taking care to torque it up to the correct spec using some ooga-doogas. After that, rerouted some of the wiring at the front and then started to refit the plastic clips in the wheel arches. Unfortunately, I've broken a couple of these clips. They still work, but they're a bit damaged, so I will get some replacements at some point. So now in the final stages of putting the car back together, just refitting the intercooler with the clamps that go over. At some point I will change the snood boots for some nice coloured silicone ones, but I think the priority at the moment is to get the car running correctly. So it's just intercooler brackets to hold that in place and the cover, and we're there. Everything now is back together except for fitting the front bumper and filling it up with coolant. I did save as much of the coolant as I could, but obviously the state of all the front of the engine with the oil, things like that, when we took the supercharger off and it dumped all the coolant, it's taken a load of the oil with it, so I don't really fancy fitting that again or putting that back in it again. So we'll get some more coolant. We'll leave the front bumper off just to check for any leaks when we run it up. So I've now ran out of bits to fit, except for the front bumper. So all looking good. Right, let's go for a crank. So I think you could hear clearly after I'd started it up and was running it for a bit that the noise is still there. it still, making that noise. So I'm not quite sure what that is. Anyone had this issue with the Mini before? I will take it down the road at some point, because I had a distinct lack of power before, which we'll see if we've overcome that issue in the by doing these things. But making that noise, we haven't obviously fixed that, so I'm not quite sure what's left now that it could be. So drop a comment below, any ideas as to what the issue will be. Next time, hopefully I've got a bit more of a update for you, and hopefully we can progress this, because I want to thack the absolute living daylights out of it now on a track, teach it a lesson. So yeah, more to come.